moments that should feel clear, but instead they feel harder to stay in. And when that happens, the response isn't always to move closer, it's to pull away. It doesn't always look obvious when it's happening either. Sometimes it just feels like a pause, or like something in you went quiet. If that's something you've experienced, this will probably feel familiar. When something real starts to happen, that's usually when it shows up the most. Instead of leaning into the moment, you begin to pull back. Not always on purpose, and not always consciously, it just happens. A conversation starts to get deeper. Someone asks you something direct, or a situation begins to carry more weight than expected. And in that moment, something in you pauses. Your responses get shorter, your mind gets quieter, and instead of staying in it, you begin to disconnect from it. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's subtle, but it creates distance in moments that actually matter. What makes it confusing is that it doesn't always feel like a clear decision. It doesn't feel like you're choosing to leave the moment. It feels more like the moment becomes harder to stay inside of. So instead of reacting, you slow down. Instead of expressing, you hold back. And instead of being present, you start to move inward. From the outside, it can look like disinterest or silence. But internally, it's usually something else entirely. It's processing. It's hesitation. It's trying to make sense of something before it comes out wrong. There's usually a reason this pattern develops. In some environments, reacting quickly doesn't always feel like the best option. Over time, that can create a habit of slowing everything down before responding. Not because there's nothing to say, but because there's a need to make sure it comes out the right way. In other situations, it can come from being in conversations where things escalate quickly, so pulling back becomes a way to stay in control. And over time, that response can start to show up even when the situation doesn't require it. And when you stay with that long enough, a pattern starts to form. Something real shows up, and instead of engaging with it, your first response is to create space from it. Not because you don't care, but because being in it feels harder than it should. So instead of risking saying the wrong thing, you say less. Instead of reacting too quickly, you slow everything down. And over time, that becomes your default. You might start to notice it show up in specific moments, not randomly, but in situations where something carries more weight. Conversations that feel important. Moments where someone is asking something direct. Or situations where there isn't a clear answer right away. Those are the moments where shutting down tends to show up the most. Not because there's nothing there, but because there's too much to sort through at once. And that's where the internal conflict starts, because part of you wants to respond. You can feel it. You know something is there, but another part of you is trying to organize it, understand it, or make sure it comes out the right way. And while that's happening, the moment keeps moving, the conversation keeps going, and you end up missing the space where your response would have naturally fit. Afterward, things become clearer. You think of what you could have said. You understand what you were feeling. You see the moment differently, but by then it's already passed. And that gap between what you felt in the moment and what you understood afterward is where the frustration builds. So now you're not just dealing with the moment itself, you're also dealing with the realization that comes later. And that can make it feel like your response in the moment didn't match what was actually there. But that doesn't mean you were wrong. It just means your understanding needed more time to catch up. Shutting down isn't always about not knowing what to say. It's often about not being able to access it fast enough in the moment. The feeling is there, but the words aren't ready. The reaction exists, but it's not organized yet. So instead of expressing something incomplete, you hold it until it makes more sense. And sometimes that means it doesn't get expressed at all. So what can you do when you start to notice this happening? The first thing is learning to recognize the moment before the shutdown fully takes over. Because once it's fully there, everything slows down too much to respond. But right before that happens, there's usually a small window. It can feel like hesitation, like something wants to come out but pauses, or like your mind is trying to catch up to what you're feeling. That moment is easy to miss if you're not paying attention to it. But if you can recognize it while it's happening, it gives you a chance to stay connected instead of pulling away without realizing it. Another part of this is allowing your response to exist before it's fully organized. A lot of the shutdown comes from trying to make sure what you say is complete, clear, or correct. But in real conversations, most responses aren't fully formed. They take shape as you speak. That might look like saying something simple instead of nothing at all. Even something like, "I'm not fully sure how to explain this yet, but something about this doesn't feel right." That keeps you present in the moment instead of removing yourself from it completely. Something else that matters here is understanding that slowing down doesn't have to mean disappearing. There's a difference between taking a moment to think and completely disconnecting from the interaction. You can stay engaged while you process. That might look like maintaining eye contact, acknowledging what was said, or simply letting the other person know you're still there, even if you're taking a second. That way, the space you need doesn't turn into distance that wasn't intended. One more thing to consider is what happens after the moment, because a lot of clarity shows up later. That's not a problem, that's part of how processing works. But instead of letting that clarity stay unspoken, it can be brought back into the conversation. You can revisit things once you understand them better. That helps close the gap between what you felt and what you were able to express, and it prevents those moments from feeling unfinished. And something deeper underneath all of this is learning to tolerate the discomfort of staying present when things start to feel real. Because part of shutting down isn't just about not knowing what to say, it's about how uncomfortable it can feel to stay in that moment while everything is still unclear. The more you can sit in that space without immediately pulling away, the less overwhelming it becomes over time. None of this is about forcing yourself to respond faster or pushing through something that doesn't feel natural. It's about understanding how the pattern works so it doesn't automatically take over every time something real happens. Because once you can see it clearly, you have more control over how you stay present inside those moments. Shutting down doesn't mean there's nothing there. Most of the time, it means there's more there than can be handled all at once. But the more you stay with those moments instead of leaving them, the more familiar they become. And over time, what once caused you to shut down becomes something you can actually move through. Not perfectly, but more consistently. And that's where things start to feel different.